So, his hero never kills the villain. I hadn't realized that, but I think probably the reason that heroes don't kill the killers anymore ultimately is that the studio heads and people that put up the money want to bring them back for another sequel. So they always figure out some way to have them sort of wink at the end, like, I'll be back.
So it's all about the bottom dollar then.
Yes, for some people.
Slutty kids die and virgins live.
I think, yes, if slutty kids die and virgins live, certainly it was firmly established in Friday the 13th, but I think they were all slutty. But, that was the general rule. But, it's really just any lapse of attention. Making love is probably the most extreme example of that. So people that, are engaging in lovemaking in one shape or another usually get nailed in a horror film. But it's also something that teenagers are very interested in, so that creeps into the story plot a lot.
You don't think it's something where like the Christian Coalition is backing this stuff?
Christian Coalition, I don't think is backing any of the rules of horror, except they would like to abolish it entirely.
I don't know. We tried to ask Tammy Faye a couple of questions.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She wasn't very receptive, but we tried. It seems like
she's writing a film, I think, called The Wig, which is just a wig that takes over L.A., kills everybody. It's a joke. It's a Tammy Faye joke.
It seems like the bigger and slower the killer, the more likely they'll catch their victim.
Well, this is true. I think for a long time the killers in horror films moved very slowly, and somehow the hero or heroine, usually the heroine, fell down running away and somehow got caught. So that was, I think, a factor of the sets were smaller in those days, so people had to move more slowly. So they didn't use up the whole set in 1 second.
Everyone seems to ignore the obvious warning signs.
Well, that's true. Don't go outside. Don't go out to explore the noise. I think I had that in Nightmare on Elm Street even. You have to have characters that are doing what the audience doesn't want them to do. That raises the tension and, makes things scary.
Do you think that these victims have some kind of like stupidity gene in them? Like it seems like they always do the obvious.
Well, you can have. They sometimes do. I mean, in Scream, we play with all the rules, and I think there was a scene of Sydney running upstairs right after she had been on the telephone saying, "I hate these movies where people run upstairs instead of running outside." But the fact was, somebody was at the door, so she didn't have a chance.
Back doors, hallways. You kind of. It seems like the cops are always the last people to figure out what's going on in these things.
Yeah, well, one of the basic rules of horror films is that all the adults have to be incompetent. But that's part of a larger picture, the basic technique. So if you want to just boil it down to the bare bones of things that work in horror films, is that any sort of thing that's going to help you, exterior of yourself, your almost naked self, has to be eliminated. So, the gun always runs out of bullets and the car runs out of gas, and the parents are stupid or they have some secret, and cops are always the last to figure out what's going on. Because, I think it's a basic fear of teenagers that the adults of the world are either incompetent or insane. And, it's almost like a broadening of the idea of that your parents are just not able to be understood whatsoever. So, cops have to be incompetent. Otherwise, if the cops are competent, problem solved. They come in, shoot the villain, and, end of story.